cool, man. So, yeah, you're in Alabama.
Yeah. So when you and I think first started corresponding through Instagram, I was living in Atlanta. And I've been a fan of Triptides for since probably 2017 or so.
Oh, nice.
And I remember watching the documentary Fuzz City.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the first things that you said was, I'm from Atlanta. And I was like, no shit. I didn't realize that, because I always knew that you were LA based. So it was crazy to learn that.
Yeah, it gets confusing because I'm Atlanta and then I went to school in Indiana at IU. And then I ended up in LA. So half the people think I'm from Indiana. Some people think I'm from Atlanta. Some people think I'm a California guy. It's weird. I don't really know. So I just stopped explaining it. But yeah, I'm Atlanta 18 years of my life. And then I just left, but it's fine.
But that's actually, I think, something I usually talk to guests about is, where someone's from originally and kind of like how you started playing music. But honestly, I have listened to enough, with the Fuzz City documentary and a podcast or two that I heard you on from the past. I feel like you have kind of covered how you started playing music and how Triptides started and that kind of thing. So I kind of want to, just have a little bit of a free-flowing conversation about a few things that I think are relevant to your music and your background. But namely, one of them being that you're from Atlanta, which is kind of a weird place in the South because it's not really like a Southern town,
Right.
It's like a big city. And I was going to say that your music immediately to me makes me think of like the West Coast or, being on a beach somewhere.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just kind of like one of the things I wanted to talk about is like location of a band or a musician or artist in terms of like the style of music that they play. Cause I heard you talk about this on Fuzz City a little bit, that it's kind of like, it was ironic for you at times being in Indiana and making music where you're talking about laying in the sun, but that's snowing outside, So I guess I wanted to kind of ask you, do you think that a band like Triptides would work somewhere like Atlanta, or do you think it kind of needs to be on the West Coast?
I like to think it could work anywhere, I think music doesn't have to be defined geographically, but I do think that I don't know, it's about what I was listening to and the influences more than the location, because Atlanta, just growing up in Atlanta, it's, it's pretty, it's Southern, it's a cool Southern city, but it's I don't know. I was just more interested in the West Coast stuff when I was a kid, when my dad would listen to Fox 97 and the Beach Boys or California Dreamin' or, stuff like that would come on and I'd be like, oh, that sounds awesome. So it's I was thinking about the coast even when I was in Atlanta. So it was more like a mental geographic thing. And honestly, Atlanta's not that far from the coast. You could drive to the beach if you really wanted to. It's not great. Not a great beach. It's not going to Malibu, but it's still, it's on the East Coast. It's not landlocked. It's connected to the ocean. So there is I'm just going to let myself have a little validation there because it is sort of a coastal state, even though you're just going to Jekyll Island or Kiowa or whatever, but it's Sapelo. I went there when I was Boy Scout back in the day, that was an island. So, but anyway, I think it could work anywhere. I like to think that it seems like Triptides does really well in the middle of Europe, somewhere that's not even close to the ocean. So, but I don't know. I think that surfer, then again, we play in a surfery place and everyone's into it too. So it just depends, but I don't know. The geography of music is interesting for sure. And I think it does dictate some of it, but I think I knew I wanted to make sort of that West Coast kind of vibe. And that's why I ended up getting out here somehow, It was cool. Just kind of ordained itself.
I felt like I related to you when you were talking about, probably on Fuzz City as well, bands that started in LA that you liked. One of my favorite bands growing up was The Doors. And I would say compared to other kind of classic psychedelic LA-based bands from the late 60s, early 70s, The Doors really, used Southern California and LA as like part of their identity. And I guess, generally speaking, I just wanted to ask you about, your thoughts on all that. So thank you for, and actually it's a good segue since you talked about Europe. Y'all went to Europe this past year on tour, correct?
Yeah. It was great. Always. And that's like our favorite place to tour at this point. We have a really great European booking agent, and he just like makes awesome tours. We just go over there and everyone has a great time and we get to explore. And touring the States is cool, but you drive for 15 hours and it goes from like, hey man, how you doing? To like, hey man, how are you doing? And then like in Europe, it goes from like, salut to like, buongiorno. You're like, this is sick. I just went through like 5 languages, So there's something interesting about touring in Europe because it's so like compact compared to the States. Obviously we should tour the States more, but we're working on it. But
Well, that was something I was going to bring up to you is that I'm a huge, I've been into psychedelic music, like classic psychedelic music since I was in high school, but I've really been getting into over the past 10 or so years, and you're part of this, like the psychedelic resurgence that's kind of happened. I guess people call it Neo-Psychedelia or just modern psychedelic influenced music. I'm trying to remember where I was going with all of that. I'm sorry. What was my question going to be?
You've liked psych for a long time, but now you're into new psych.
Well, I think sorry, I got my train of thought back. So basically what's kind of bummed me out about living in the South and being into that stuff is that because of a lot of that being located on the West Coast, I think just logistically bands like Triptides or Levitation Room or any of those bands that I really like from the West Coast, it's kind of hard to get to the South. But do you think it's just a logistical problem, or do y'all feel like this, like places in the South wouldn't be as receptive to that sound and like what y'all are doing?
No, I think it's always great when we make it down south. It's just a matter of getting booked and putting on, getting a promoter interested in booking the band down there. And it's different because it's like, the Northeast is so compact, you can hit like New York and Boston and Philly and whatever. And it's all like right there. Where the South, it's like Atlanta. And then it's like, okay, we'll go to Richmond. I don't know. It's like a little different. Like, of course, Asheville has a cool scene. And like, we've never played there. I used to go as a kid. I loved to play there. And like, but there are some kind of like gray zones, like, playing a show in Tuscaloosa or what, Birmingham, where normally when we have done it, we just go Atlanta and then maybe Florida somewhere in the Panhandle and then get to New Orleans. Cause New Orleans, there actually is like, there's a party scene. So that means there's a music scene. So that means there's a rock and roll promoter there. But I don't know. There are some tough spots, like not playing a lot of shows in, West Virginia here. So it's tricky.
Might I make a couple suggestions because, you've been living on the West Coast for a while. A few cities that are kind of growing in terms of like an alternative scene. I think Nashville, especially like the east side of Nashville.
Yeah, we've played East Nashville a couple times. I like playing in Nashville for sure. I'm discrediting the South by not mentioning that as a easy rootable thing 4 hours north of Atlanta. And like, I know like Chattanooga's getting cooler or something, like I used to go there as a kid.
I was gonna even mention,
I'm not like the hugest fan of Birmingham, but there is a scene there. And, given the right circumstances, like for example, there's a venue in Birmingham, called Saturn.
Okay.
It's actually, I believe it's still owned by, this is going to be something I was going to bring up to you later in the podcast, but I wanted to suggest local psychedelic bands from Alabama and the South that you might not know about.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of a band from Alabama called Man or Astroman?
I have heard of that band. They've been around since like the 90s, or am I wrong?
Since the early 90s, I think.
Early
since
90s,
93 or so.
Yeah, of course. And that guy owns the Saturn bar?
Yes. So Saturn originally was like a bar slash venue. And then during the pandemic, they sold kind of like the part of the building, I believe, to a coffee company that is like the bar more. I mean, you still get drinks in there, but it's a really kick-ass venue. If y'all ever had a chance to play there, I mean, I can send you some links and stuff. That's a really good place that I would suggest looking into if you're ever looking to throw somewhere else on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, one of the guys from Man or Astro Man, and if Wikipedia is correct, and I just figured I'd bring this up since I'm in Auburn, Alabama, I believe that Man or Astro Man originally started in Auburn. It was all Auburn students.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
You know, our bass player and sometimes guitar player, Steven, he went to school in Auburn. He went to whatever that college is.
Auburn University?
No, what's it called? It's got a funny name. Crimson Tide, Roll Tide.
You're thinking about Alabama.
No, what's the other one? He went. No, it's just called Auburn, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
So
sorry, I don't know.
No, you're fine.
Southern schools.
Auburn University is in Auburn, Alabama. Auburn, Alabama, where I am right now, is only about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from Atlanta.
Yeah, he went to school there. He studied. He got his English degree there. He's there for 4 years.
I did not know that at all. I thought that he went to UGA because I know that he is friends with. I believe he's friends with my friend Zach Milster, who I went to high school with.
Okay.
Who's a really kick-ass bass player, guitar player for a band called Night Palace.
Yeah. My friend, that's funny. My friend Jake Krakowski was telling me his friend is this singer of Night. It's a girl singer of Night Palace, right? Because he was my friend just dropped this record and it was really cool, kind of 80s dream pop stuff. Yeah, small world.
Well, I mean, that's what I think is really cool. And honestly, I know I'm talking a lot and rambling, but let me just put it this way, man. This is kind of like a dream come true for me that I'm getting to talk to you because y'all are like one of my absolute favorite psychedelic bands in general.
Thanks,
Afterglow
dude.
is like my favorite album of y'all's, and I've just been a huge fan for 5 or 6 years. So it's an honor to sit here, man. I'm
liking the Afterglow love. I feel like that one does not get very much, it doesn't get much due, I feel like as everyone likes Azure for some reason, that one just like hit the algorithm right. Afterglow, I thought was the better album. We recorded them at the exact same time. Like Azure and Afterglow, it was just like all of them recorded, mixed up. And then we were like, well, these have the chorus pedal and these have a phaser pedal, or what? These have Mellotron on them. And then I thought Visitors was cool too, but that's another one. Like it was like more 60s and I guess people connect more with that, like, or young people really like the 80s sounding stuff more nowadays. Like maybe that's an easier gateway drug into like vintage music. If it's like, sounds like The Cure. I was doing the Cleaners from Venus thing on Azure, but I thought Afterglow was like that epic psychedelia thing that I was more interested in that almost, but it was like, I wanted to experiment with like I bought a chorus pedal and I was like, well, this sounds cool. I love Cleaners from Venus, Only Shadow and all that shit. And like, I can make some stuff like that. We got a shitty cassette machine. Like, let's do it, but they were all recorded. Yeah. On the same 8-track cassette machine. Anyway, thank you. And, that's very sweet of you to say that.
I think that I was actually wanting, you already kind of mentioned it. I wanted to lead this into another question. Why, every time I go on y'all's Spotify, the song Wake from Azure is like, has a lot more plays. And like you said, did it just hit the algorithm right and get on some playlists or something?
Yeah.
The reason I ask is, for some reason,
man.
like I like Afterglow, that sounds so much more than Azure, but they're both great. But like, what do you think happened with that song exactly?
I'm not sure, I probably just got on an algorithm. It's got some catchy stuff going on. I'm not really sure. And it's such a basic song. It's like such a basic, like surfy song. And like, yeah, I threw some like synthy pads on it and like the chorus pedal solo and whatever, and kind of random lyrics, the same kind of lyrics I would write for any other song. But like, it's almost, I feel like that song's more accessible just 'cause it's so simple, it's a simple song, where the other ones I think we were pushing for something, more abstract, and it takes longer for people to get to that than it does for people to get to like, let's go, you know? Because everyone wants to go. Let's go. Come on, man. That's just universal shit right there. Who doesn't want to go? You know, we all want to go.
I mean, I guess it speaks to a larger context of the music industry these days that, and this is not any hate, this is just kind of like how I interpret Wake compared to other songs from other albums. The simpler, the better in some ways for mass consumption. If something like y'all have some music that, you know, really you kind of jam it out more, you really build something and it ebbs and flows and takes you on a roller coaster ride. But sometimes the song that you don't necessarily expect to be the one that everyone likes is the one that everyone likes. So, yeah.
I mean, we're trying to make like psychedelic rock or like something more ethereal than, you know, I want it to be pop, psychedelic pop. I want it to be enjoyable. It's like the Beatles or something. You can listen to fucking like She Said, and it's like a pop song. Flying on Acid, that song sounds fucking crazy though. Where it's like Wake is like not a song I would listen to if I was flying on acid. Like I would listen to like one of our like deeper cuts or something, you know, like a more extended song or something more Pink Floydy or whatever, you know, not just like, I mean, it's different, I guess. I'm not saying Wake sounds anything like She Said. That would be a mistake. But I guess I'm just trying to say that I was trying to make music for deeper exploration, and I think the masses are used to just like these simple, you know, bubblegum candy songs where you just like crunch it down and it's sweet and it's gone, you know, not something like a you know, a real dinner that was like prepared like a meal, you know, of a song where it's like all these elements that build something more important, you know, some greater than the parts. And I just don't know if that's what hits the best on the algorithm. And I think that the algorithm shit sucks. And I think it's all like programmed by major labels that also have tons of shares in Spotify to teach people what they like. And that's how it works. You can't just give people something great because they're already told that this shit is going to be better. And that's why I don't have Spotify. Fuck Spotify. Fuck all streaming services. Hope they all burn to the ground. That's how I feel about it. You can edit that out if you want, but I don't really mind. It's fine.
No, I mean, this is going on YouTube, but I wouldn't mind if you were like, fuck YouTube, because what are they going to do?
Well, if it's going on YouTube, I have no problem with the sweet folks over at YouTube. I just think that the streaming service is paying people fractions of pennies for music that they work really hard on. And they're out there on the road, you know, struggling, these like young bands, and like, they could use a little extra checks from the streaming services to put gas in the tank and print up a couple more shirts. And these fucking companies with some asshole that doesn't know a single thing about music sitting at the top of the pyramid are taking everyone's money. It's so whack. It's like, I don't know. It's like we're in a really sad state of affairs here. I actually read an Instagram post from this guy the other day, and he was going on about it. And it was, I forget his name. It was like Amarillo Country. He's like a Mexican summer artist, but he summed it up pretty darn good. I actually reshared it on the Spotify, on our Instagram thing, but I don't even, Amarillo Highway, Hayden Pedigo. He did a really good post about how it's all fucked up and like, there's no reviews anymore. Like, this is cool. I was like, it's cool that you want to do an interview because like no one does anything like this anymore. Like back in like the 2000s, there was like blogs and people actually reviewed stuff. And now it's just like, get on an algorithm, get on the playlist. Otherwise, no one's going to hear your music, and it's just going to be a drop in the bucket of the internet, which is whack.
Well, in a different way, I think I can relate to all of your sentiments in terms of like what I do for my podcast. I am a musician, but I'm a drummer. I can play other instruments, but like I haven't been in a band in years. But for podcasting, it's kind of similar that sometimes like what's frustrating is you can make like a clip from a podcast and post it on Instagram Reels or TikTok and actually get some pretty good hits on it, where it's like it might get, you know, 5 or 10,000 views or 150 likes or something, to where all these people who actually don't even follow you are seeing your content, like a clip from your podcast. but then you go and look at the actual views on the YouTube video, or how many people looked it up on streaming on Spotify or Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, and it didn't get that many actual hits. So it's kind of like, and sometimes that's part of just getting in the algorithm of YouTube and people see, because, you know, people like me use hashtags, you use everything you can to get your stuff in front of people who have never seen it before, but it's still, you know, it's difficult because, like you were kind of saying, Spotify just constantly suggests the same things over and over.
Dude, it's
and
so
one of the only
weird.
reasons I even have Spotify anymore is because I have the podcast, and because I upload stuff to Spotify, I kind of like want to see what it looks like and that kind of thing before, or hear what it, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I had a free Spotify account from Levitation Room because I played with them for a long time, and they were just like, hey, we got like this many streams, and they're just giving us like the family thing. And I was like, cool, I'll take a free subscription. And then one day, I guess it just ended, and it was like, your subscription is ended. And I was like, all right, well, guess that's that, you know. I'm an iPod and record guy. I still use like the old iPod in my car and when I'm traveling, and put all my music on it, and I have all my records. And so I'm not really, and I use Spotify because it's at my work. Like I work at some shops in the mountains where I live, and they have, you know, their iPads with the Spotify on it. And I'll use that. I'll be like, oh, I guess I haven't listened to like all of Sandy Denny from Fairport's like solo stuff. Oh, I guess it's on here, and I'll listen to it. But it's so weird because if I listen to anything from the 60s, at the end of the album, it always just like plays the exact same song. It'll play like Love randomly. It'll play that song that's like, come on, people now, let's get together. You know, like every time. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is the 60s for Spotify. It's just like, we're going to play like Get Together again
CCR.
or whatever. Well, you know, if it played CCR, I'd probably just let it go. But after like the 10th time of hearing like, let's get together, I'm just like, let's not get together, because I've heard this song a zillion times. What is happening?
Wait,
Let's Get Together. I always get that one confused with the Canned Heat song.
No, I think this one's the Rascals or something, you know. It's like, come on, people now, smile.
Oh yeah,
on
that one does get annoying. But you know the Canned Heat song that's like, oh, let's work together. You know that one?
I think so.
Come on, let's work together.
I think so, yeah.
That song is badass. It's got a
I'm fine with Canned Heat.
Like that song is awesome.
I do like the guy with the high-pitched voice the best, though. He's like, go to the country. And that guy's sick, but I think he died kind of young, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah, didn't make it too long.
That reminds me, because Going Up the Country has flute parts. I really love whenever y'all include flute, or even like, you know, more experimental instruments. Like I heard a lot of sitar sounds on So Many Days.
I've got a sitar here that I can play well enough to make up the psychedelic sounds. And, you know, I got my buddy Kobe plays flute on that album. And then, I don't know, I've been trying to do more electric piano stuff recently. That's like my new like fun instrument. So the new record we're dropping is going to be like a lot of electric piano and Farfisa, which is actually what my computer's sitting on right now. Because I had it on my desk, which is also the tape machine, but it had a really bad glare since the window's right there, so I switched it around. But yeah, I'm always thinking, like, what's a weird instrument I can incorporate? Like, I was making this Brazilian kind of psych bossa nova 70s thing, and I was like, shit, I do have this Cuica. I don't really know how to play it, but it's the thing that goes like, ooh, 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 you know, whatever. It's really hard. You have to have like, I don't know, wet towel and stuff. It's a whole thing. But I'm always thinking like, do I do the same thing, or do I like, I mean, leaning into like the organ and the Rhodes it's like a sound in itself, but like the sitar, like when that happens, it's kind of like stars align. I'll be like, man, it could really use something. And it'll be like, wait, it's in D, you know, that's the key the sitar is tuned to most of the time. It can do C sharp, or D, but that's pretty much it. So it's like, it's in one of those three keys. I'll be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll add sitar. And like, it's fun. I don't know. I have a sarod too, which is like the Afghani sitar, but it's hard to play. And I've only added into one song so far, and it hasn't been released. And that's another weird one. I mean, weird isn't cool.
I remember there being a song, I believe you played, didn't you say you played on Headspace by Levitation Room?
Yeah, I played all the Wurlitzer. I played the tabla. I played Sitar on Warmth of the Sun, but that was the single leading up to the album. But,
I love that song. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I think any of the weird instruments on Headspace was probably me. But Gabe got some weird sounds with his guitar too. So
I'm trying to remember the name of the song on Headspace that is very sitar and tabla heavy. What's
Dream Within a Dream?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually, it's tambura, which was actually like, the 4-string, like, and then it's the tabla. So that we just did that one in the apartment that Julie and I were living in. It was like a home demo that just sounded good, so we kept it.
I remember, I think I've had this happen with Triptides and with Levitation Room on Instagram. That there were a couple times, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I make like psychedelic visuals. I've been looking for more opportunities to do actually do the projections at shows, but living in Auburn, Alabama, it's a little bit hit or miss. There's not much of a scene here for that. But I remember a couple times like making like a psychedelic visual, putting it into like a story on Instagram with like a Triptide song. I think I used The Illusion one time, and I think I used Dream Within a Dream for the Levitation Room time. But what was cool was tagging y'all and having you repost it on like your Instagram, and I was like, this feels really fucking cool. That like, I fucking love this band. They kind of like inspire me to make this kind of stuff. And, just feeling like the world's a little bit smaller than it is, and that's what I kind of love about social media. As many downfalls as it has, that's like how you and I have been able to make this connection, really.
I think there's some utility to social media. Oftentimes I just want to delete everything, but and I also like dream of just making a post on the Triptides thing, being like, "Hi, we don't post that much because I'm working on music and like living a life. Like I can't just be like, look at me like in the studio." It's like, no, because I'm doing stuff in the studio. Like I'm making shit every day. Like, and I feel like if you don't post on Instagram, people are like, that guy's probably dead, like I think he's gone. I think we lost him, but like, I think some people are really good at doing it seamlessly, but I feel like if I tried to do that, I'd be like, well, I'm back here on the Fender Rhodes. I'm going to make a new song. It would just feel like forced and dumb because I think maybe I'm just too old or something. Like I miss that. I'm not like tied into that slightly younger generation that's like seamlessly using the phone to make everything seem awesome. And like their whole life is interesting. Like my life is interesting to me and it's interesting to my girlfriend and my friends and everyone we hang. And I'm happy, but I can't just like transmit that out to the universe and be like, look at all this cool shit I'm doing. Cause I don't know, maybe it wouldn't work that way. Cause I don't know if I could translate me recording cool demos or whatever, making Thai food and being like, look, I'm doing it, but at the same time, Instagram is cool because you could make that thing and I could see it and reshare it. And then we have like a link between our artistic things, which in some way will help both of us like reach more people and share more cool stuff and get more people interested in nice things that we're making. Cause that's what it's all about, It's not about keeping it for us. It's about sharing it with people. And that's what makes it real and makes it fun and hopefully enriches someone else's experience in life or whatever. And also like yesterday, a guy in New York who I've done a interview like this with, actually, I think it's, I forget, it's like records. Anyway, he posted a story and he was DJing, Look at My Records. And he was DJing a single of an old Triptide song. And I totally forgot about that song even existing, called Clementine. And then I was like, oh shit, let's play it. And when I threw it on the turntable, I was like, cool. Yeah, I totally forgot that song existed. Totally forgot all the lyrics. Don't remember making it. And it was just like an interesting, like, reminder of something artistic that happened. And those moments are kind of cool too. And I don't know, there's some validity to the whole thing, but I do feel like there's just more ads than ever. And it's just like, I feel like people, like I said, if you're not posting stuff or storing stuff, you just lose followers. Or like, we're on tour and the followers go up, then we get back and it's just like hundreds of followers like disappear. And I'm like, I don't know what I did wrong. I didn't post anything. Maybe that's the problem.
I think a lot of people are use social media in like a very I don't know. They're not thinking of the longer run of things. They're going for like a short amount of time, and they quickly follow and quickly unfollow. I don't know. Trying to think of. Hold on, give me 1 second while I.
Well, Steven's saying that we need to do TikTok or something. He's saying Instagram is dying, and I was like, not another one.
No, okay, so you know what's interesting? Actually, this is maybe a good transition point. So something that I've kind of noticed through sharing stuff on TikTok, because I'll share psychedelic visuals, so, you know, sometimes I'll use clips from people's music, and TikTok does recognize whose music it is and gives you credit. So I've used probably a Triptides song on there before, and at the bottom, people, if they like the song, they can actually see that it says Triptides, the name of the song, and click on it, and it'll take them to where they can find it on streaming services. So that part is pretty cool to me. It's kind of like what we were talking about supporting each other's art and sharing stuff that helps each other. But what I've noticed over the past like 10 years really kind of happen is psychedelic art in general has started to kind of just like enter the mainstream in terms of like not only entertainment, but also advertising. Because like I see advertising all the time now that uses, I'm sure you know what I'm referring to when I say chromatic aberrations.
Maybe.
Where like someone is kind of separated into red, green, and blue.
Okay, like art, whatever what's that called? Like, is that how they did like Technicolor or something? Or like, there's some old film style where they did 3 colors and then put them together to make the color.
Yeah. Well, and when you watch old stuff, chromatic aberration is basically just like when you look at the edge of something on an old TV and you can see like little bits of red or green or blue kind of like hanging over the edge, but sometimes people push it.
Right.
That I see that used in corporate mainstream advertising now, and that didn't used to be a thing. I think part of it is them getting into the mind of like, oh, well, what releases dopamine in the brain, releases serotonin? It's like pretty colors. So I guess I wanted to kind of ask you, have you noticed that like, for example, I mean, Tame Impala 10 years ago was not that big of a band. Now, I mean, I've heard their songs on commercials and all that kind of thing. What do you think changed, or like, what have you noticed with all that?
I think I know what you're saying. Like, there's a lot more like psychedelic influenced, you know, pop culture, mainstream culture, ad stuff, marketing stuff. It's probably because everyone's doing drugs now. Like, it's like cool for like, I mean, it's not just like the San Francisco hippies in the 60s doing drugs. It's like the guy at the top of the fucking like marketing campaign, like doing DMT and shit. And like a lot of these, like, I know it's popular in like Silicon Valley. People do like, you know, recreational psychedelics all the time. And people are starting to understand that helps like problem solving and creativity and making things, you know, work in different ways. And I think that's probably blending into some of the things we're seeing. It's like, I mean, mushrooms are like basically decriminalized in a couple states now, or almost legal in a couple states. And like, I don't know, people are just, there's lots of articles, you know, it's not just Vice and shit being like, I smoked frog venom and then I died and now I can be the top ad agency guy. Or whatever, you know, there's a lot of things in it. And I think it's cool because I think those things are healthy. And I think it's probably the only way we're going to save the planet eventually is probably by leaning into those mindsets and realizing it's not all about us and like consuming and destroying and throwing things in the landfill and killing the environment and all that shit, because that's the worst. So hopefully it's good. And hopefully every time I see an ad with chromatic aberration, someone somewhere is also like, yeah, that guy gets it. And then the guy that makes it's like, yeah, that guy got it. And then somehow that'll lead to like saving elephants and shit. That would be great. I would love that. You know, I really, I support, you know, protecting the planet and wildlife and really care about animals. And I just feel like maybe if we stop having such a giant ego about us being the most important, then we can help these other causes and, you know, stop the horrible things that are happening in the world. And, you know, so yeah, I think going back to it, maybe things are finally getting mainstream with this psychedelic thoughts and that kind of stuff. Cause, you know, there's also people that would probably have never done psychedelics back, you know, 10 years ago. Like, yeah, what the heck? Everyone's doing it. It's legal. You know, there's definitely that camp of people where it's like, I can't do that. It's illegal. So it's like, maybe those people are changing their mind, and that's leading to some interesting effects on the, you know, ripple effect through media and advertising and just general art, which is cool, you know?
So you mentioned a minute ago, you know, having an affinity for nature, animals, just the outdoors and everything. Through y'all's music videos and also through your sound, over the past couple albums, I've been able to tell that, I guess you know, made the transition from maybe more of like an urban LA, living experience to living in the mountains.
Yes.
Just because y'all's music has a lot more of like a rural vibe now than it used to.
Well, you know, we got the rural album out of the way. Had to do it, you know. Had to do our music from Big Pink. Had to do our Sweetheart of the Rodeo, Working Man's Dead, whatever you want to call Rubber Soul. But that's probably not going to happen again. I still write a lot of rural, folky, country rock stuff. And I might just start a side project to release that because it doesn't really seem... Like, of course, I want Triptides to have one, like, yeah, like I said, that album in the canon, but I don't think that's the trajectory of the band necessarily. I think we are going to move back to our normal offering, but like, it'll be more like cosmic psychedelic pop from here on out and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to release all of my country rock jams, because I do sit on the porch and, you know, hang out with raccoons and strum the acoustic guitar and sing about the, you know, the country things, but I don't know if that will continue to pervade our normal record releases. But I'm glad you picked up on that. And it is really nice living in the mountains and having that vibe, but it's also really cool looking out the window and it's like snowing on pine trees. And I'm sitting here with like, you know, a monophonic synth and an electric piano making some like far out stuff. It's almost like music from Hoth or something at that point, you know, it's like that sci-fi nature thing. Or I think that's kind of cool too, because like nature's, you know, kind of fantastic and psychedelic in its own way. I know the city has that like urban feel, like you were talking about, like the Doors, you know, that kind of like tough, like late nights and smoky clubs and like drugs and whatever. And, you know, it's like been there, done that. It's nice to be up here. And I can always go back to LA. And we do go to shows and we have a good time. But I look around, I'm like, it's still happening. It's still going to happen even if I'm not here. And I can always come back and enjoy the vibes. And I love that. And I love seeing, you know, my friends that still live in LA, which is a lot of them. And yeah, it's great. But I do like, it's always great getting back to the top of the mountain and getting out of the car and being like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Something about quiet makes you want to like put noise into it more, you know, like I got the drum set over here and it'll be a quiet morning and I'll just be like blasting away, you know, cause it's fun. It's like bringing energy into the void. It's cool.
Well, I mean, it kind of, our general conversation is kind of alluding to the idea, something that I talk to people about sometimes, because I feel like I'm pretty well versed in like, you know, the different sounds that psychedelic music has. And y'all, I think, have done a good job of over the years kind of exploring the different sounds that, you know, that you have. Like you said, the new album is a lot more folksy or folky country, a little bit like the pedal steel on a lot of the songs. That was awesome.
Tyler English killed it. Great guy.
Nice. But I think what I'm kind of saying is sometimes I have a hard time explaining to people like psychedelic music because sometimes people associate psych rock, stuff that's kind of like mildly psychedelic, you know, on a very like simple level, or something I remember hearing you say on a podcast. You talked about there being like a Venn diagram between psychedelic music and shoegaze, and how some things cross over and other things kind of are very separate. And that's how I've felt over the years, is like I've explained to people that I like psychedelic music, and then they go, oh, so they point me to like stuff from like, you know, the 90s that's very like spiritualized, I guess, is a band that I think of, that it's very like experimental, and it's very like it's more like effects heavy than it is like focused on songwriting. And I really like more vintage sounds, like what Triptides makes, that is more, I think the songwriting is very important. You know, it's not just, hey, let me blow your mind with these cosmic sounds. It's more like, let me write a really good, well-structured song and then blend those in where they're necessary.
Oh, I'm glad that you're on that wavelength. I mean, I just think this calling music psychedelic is like an endlessly expanding umbrella. Like it could be Loveless, or it could be Popol Vuh, like super quiet, like sitar and like acoustic piano, or it could be, you know, it could be like Gary Newman could be psychedelic. I mean, fucking Two-Way Army. I mean, lots of things psychedelic when you're on drugs, but I do think that like the term psychedelic, it comes from the energy of the musician, right? The spirit of the music. And it's not always the instruments being used and the effects and how trippy the lyrics are or whatever. I think Neil Young can be psychedelic when he's like on a roll and like just going crazy. And it's like, and people call that like, you know, like roots rock. But it's like, man, listen to fucking like, you know, Sit Down by the River on acid, and it's like fucking tripped out as fuck. And they were all like they're on that level, that wave of, you know, that mindset or whatever. But I do like to think that the songwriting should come first, at least for my music. And I think that any song you write, you should be able to like sit down and like, someone's like, oh, what song was that? And you're like, I don't know, like, play it on the piano, you know? It doesn't have to be like, oh, hold on, let me get like 4 synthesizers and the 2 drummers in here and I'll show you the song or whatever. It should be like, what is it like? You should just be able to play it on the piano. I don't even know. Like any Triptide song, or like, you know, whatever. It sounds about the same. So I don't know. It's a good, I just think it's a good way to keep things organized in a way that makes the songs coherent and easy to consume. And but I like Pink Floyd. I mean, there's some jams, like if someone's like, play that one jam on Obscured by Clouds, it starts the album, and you're like When You're In or whatever. It's like, I can't just like play that. but it doesn't matter, because it's like cool intro jam, down, 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 whatever. It's not like, whereas like, I don't know, What's the Deal is like an actual beautiful like pop song that they just made kind of trippy with piano and stuff. But it's light. I don't know. Anyway, it's a big umbrella. It doesn't all have to have like 100 guitars, like whatever, My Bloody Valentine, to be psychedelic and stuff.
Just out of curiosity, what is your favorite Pink Floyd album? Because mine has always been The Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
I love Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I just think it's like a different band, the Syd Barrett one.
Exactly.
So for that, it's like, yeah, I love Piper at the Gates of Dawn. But then for like the rest of the Pink Floyd thing, I mean, probably Obscured by Clouds. I think that's one of my favorites. I think that one's great. And Metal. And
Metal is awesome.
I mean, I still like Dark Side of the Moon. I just don't want to say that because that's just such a fucking...
Please say it, because too many people think it's taboo to say that. But I'm like, no, to me, that's the perfect one. Like, that's... All the other ones I have some kind of problem with, that's the one that I'm like, I think it's perfect throughout.
Yeah, I think Dark Side of the Moon's great. They kind of lose me after I don't know, Wish You Were Here. I don't really dig The Wall that much.
It's
a little too disco. It's like, and Roger Waters is always like, yeah, da, 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 like this weird like talk voice. I'm like, I don't really need to hear that. I just like it when he sings and they do the harmonies that are all mellow and cool. And that's all I really need. And it's like, I don't know. The Wall just gets a little too concept album-y too. Like, I like a band that's like Dark Side of the Moon is like concept album-y because it's constructed like architecturally, and I think that's great. But you never like, you could listen to any song from Dark Side. I guess you could listen to a bunch of songs from The Wall and be like, oh yeah, that's a great song. But like, I don't know, Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, Obscured by Clouds, even before that, seems like there's less pretense because it's like not as concepty, and that's why I really like it, because it still has like a lot of the same vibes as Dark Side of the Moon, and it's like great songwriting, but it's just like a collection of really good songs, which I think is cool too. You know, not everything has to be strung together, starting with a heartbeat and ending with the heartbeat, you know, and that's cool. They did that, and they were like pioneering that shit. And I like Tommy, and I like SF Sorrow, and I like these other like early concept things, but I feel like it led to some rock and roll excess later on that I wasn't really interested in.
Well, as much as I love early psychedelic music from like the mid to late 60s, there were some bands like Jefferson Airplane that got a little too, in my opinion, a little too experimental to like, cause they would have like, you know, like an 8 to 12 minute song that I'm sure if you saw it live was mind blowing at that time. But when you listen to the recording, it just doesn't do much for me because it's just very indulgent, you know?
Even like The Dead is like probably one of my favorite bands. Like I put them up there with the Beatles. Like I was talking to my girlfriend last night, like are the Dead better than the Beatles? Because they're like a band, you know, like longer and like played and like blew everyone's collective fucking minds with their music live for like 30 years or whatever. It's like the Beatles played a couple shows and it wasn't even that trippy. It probably sounded like shit. The PA sucked, you know, and whatever. But I do think we were listening to Oxumoxua, and it's like that one song, What's Become of the Baby or whatever, that like really tripped out like 10-minute song after China Cat. I'm just like, do we have to do this? Like, I'm just trying to have fun, you know, like, and like, I guess that'd be really trippy on drugs and stuff, but like too much, like I kind of just want some songs, and I like when they do the songs. It's a great record. I mean, it's a great album. I still give it 5 stars, but sometimes I wonder if that is an overly indulgent exploration to psychedelia. Not sure it needs to happen. It'd be cool live. Like when I'm listening to a live Dead like concert, be like drums into space or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, just keep it. You know, it's all like weird and live, but like I think that's what makes it interesting. It's like these totally organic experiments like in the moment, which is cool. Where I think What's Become of the Baby, it's like it might have also been like that, but it feels like they planned it, which kind of makes it different. Not worse, but just like more thought went into something that's basically just like a bunch of sounds and Jerry like making weird vocalizations. So I don't know, but still great record.
I think and this is kind of an old reference at this point, but in the modern era of like psychedelic music, one of the few examples I can think of like a longer, it's not even like a jam, it's like 4 songs in one, of like a longer song that works really well is the song Siberian Breaks by MGMT off of Congratulations.
Love that song. It's a great song. We were just listening to it on the car like a couple days ago, man, and me and Steven were blasting that song right when it came out. I'd come home from college and we'd meet up in Atlanta and drive around and blast that song. And it would be, I remember the first time he played it, he actually showed it to me. And like right before the end where it drops, just like, wait for it, wait. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, it hit me really good at that moment, of course, but still a great song. And I'm sure that's like, I don't know. I can't tell if they like recorded a bunch of different jams and then they were like, let's just splice them together. Or if that was like a whole concept they already had written out, like an opus, like a almost classical, you know, whatever thing. I mean, nothing repeats. It wouldn't be like, a real classical form. But I'd be interested to ask, like, hey, did you guys just like write all this stuff, or was it like a bunch of songs and you're like, let's make one giant song? That'll be so weird. We're on a good trip. We're in Hawaii or wherever.
Mm-hmm. I remember when that album came out, which I believe was like 2009. I remember reading an article online that said that Paul McCartney heard Siberian Breaks and was like, I want to work with them. Like, which is, it's pretty cool it's a pretty cool recommendation if you have someone like him. But MGMT is kind of a good example of what we were talking about earlier of psychedelic music entering the mainstream, because Electric Feel and Time to Pretend are so ridiculously psychedelic in like a modern pop way that I'd never heard at that time. And I can't even list how many movies and TV shows I've heard or Kids. I mean, all those songs that kind of like bridge the gap of like electronic MySpace music into like a really full production psychedelic pop, like modern sound. But then they also kind of, I don't know, I haven't liked any of their music since Congratulations. So not that much. So
I haven't dove into it too much, but I really did like Congratulations. I just thought it was funny because when I was a freshman at IU, I would be like walking around, Bloomington at night or going to a party. And we definitely just walk by like frat houses and shit blasting Electric Feel. And I think that like MGMT, those guys are from the South. They're from like, like North Carolina or Tennessee or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they went to like Vanderbilt or something. I don't know. Like I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but I feel like they kind of like would have known if that was like kind of seeping into like frat culture or like party culture. And I think that's why they did like Siberian Breaks. I think they were trying to like see who was a real fan or who was just like cranking up their music to like play beer pong too, or who was like trying to like dive into it. And I remember some reviews at the time were like, they're trying to like, divide their fan base with this like trippy album. And I'm like, good, just do whatever you want, but it was an interesting thing for them to pull after such a huge like mainstream success with those other songs. Like you said, zillions of movies, Time to Pretend or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, they're good, but yeah, that's some good southern stuff. Yeah, they're from the South, and I think Hank Sullivan, the guy who's the original bass player in the Wigs. I don't know if you ever listened to the Wigs. They're a huge band for me back in the day. He was like friends with them, and he played guitar in their touring band. It was like kind of connected with the Athens thing. I don't know. I thought that was cool because I don't know. I saw them at Bonnaroo in 2009, right after I graduated high school with Steven, and we were fucking had our minds blown a little bit by MGMT. And we also saw Hank, the guy, he had a band called Karoma that was pretty good too. And they were playing in like a tent, I remember. And Nine Inch Nails was playing on like the main stage, like blasting over this band in the tent. And I was just like, oh shit. It's pretty funny. But yeah, that's some good repping of the Southern psychedelia. And Siberian Breaks. Anyway, back to that. Great song. Really good.
Yeah, give me 1 second for relays. I think this is maybe a good segue for this section of the podcast. Something I like to do on the podcast is highlight bands or artists who we're a fan of that other people might not necessarily know about. Like, we feel like they deserve more fans and that kind of thing. So if you don't mind, I think what we're going to do now, and it's fine if you don't have any suggestions, but I wanted to give you some. I'm going to give you just a couple suggestions of bands from the South that are currently making music.
Okay.
That I think that you would probably enjoy in one way or another. I tried to pick stuff that is kind of a good variety of the psychedelic spectrum, because, psychedelic music is what I really focus on. First off, this is probably my favorite on the list. Actually, no, there's two that are kind of tied, but there's a band from Orlando, which I'll count as the South, called Timothy Erie.
Oh yeah, my buddy Stu has released a 45 for them on Hypnotic Bridge Records. Yes, of course, I've heard them. Solid.
I really like their album Ritual. That album, I mean, just like I've played it so many times over the past few years. I have it on cassette. That's a solid recommendation.
I'll dig in. I haven't dug in past the 45, so I'll have to dig into it more. Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, they were just in LA. I should have gone to see them, but I was snowed in, I think, up here. They played at a bar in LA, and my buddy Stu DJ'd and stuff. And yeah, that's just 1 degree of separation, man.
Yeah, I really want to get him on the podcast. It's mainly one guy, I believe, and he has like a band that he usually plays with, but I think he writes pretty much all the music. And then another band, I've worked with this band before, made a couple of music videos for them. They're called Chris Benoit.
Okay, I don't know them.
I don't know if you get that reference. I'm not a wrestling fan, but it's a wrestling reference. There was a wrestler in the 90s whose name was Chris, like Chris, and then Benoit, Benoit, like he was Canadian. And we don't have to go into the details. You can look him up, but he did some pretty horrific stuff before ending his own life. And it's like back in like 2007, it's a really creepy tale that happened south of Atlanta in Fayetteville, I believe.
So it's like in Atlanta, Chris Benoit's based in Atlanta?
And they spell their name Crispinwah because wrestling fans apparently go, because there's all this like weird ghost kind of stuff and like creepy haunted kind of lore around Chris Benoit. People like don't like to write his real name and they spell it differently.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I can dig into some ghost stuff. Let's go.
So like their band doesn't really have anything to do with that. They're an all instrumental band except for having a few rappers feature on some of their songs. But they combine elements of psychedelic music, shoegaze, hip hop. I would also say, I mean, shred music is a big part of it. They do, which a lot of people judge like shred guitar stuff from like the 80s, but I think they do a really good job of like mixing all these kind of otherworldly sounds with like elements from kind of 80s shred guitar kind of stuff. They have several albums. I would most recommend an album called Chris Benoit Type Beat. That one is awesome. And I have a music video called Dojo Exotic that I did with them a few years ago. That video is on YouTube.
Let's toss these in the follow-up email.
What now?
Toss them in the follow-up email so I have links.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Next band, I just wanted to recommend. This band actually changed their name, but I'm going to recommend what their old name was when they released this album. I love their band name. Rude Dude and the Creek Freaks.
Oh, wow. What's the new name?
The new name is Psychic Death. I believe that had something to do with like a label issue of like the label owned their old name or something. I don't know.
They owned Rude Dude and the Guy Freaks or what?
Rude Dude and the Creek Freaks. I love the rhyming.
Nice.
So
they have a self-titled album from like 2018 or something like that. That one's really good. It's a bit more like garage psych kind of stuff, but they've got a song called Travelin' Man that has some really heavy organ on it. That's really awesome. I would recommend them. I think that's mostly, well, okay, I'll throw one more in there. Another psychedelic band, the Burning Peppermints. They're a band from Birmingham, and they kind of go a little bit all over the spectrum, but I would say that their music kind of centers around like a garage psych kind of sound.
Okay. That sounds cool, man. I'd like to hear these bands. I haven't heard them. I've only heard Timothy Urie, so that sounds cool.
Yeah. Do you have any like LA or just West Coast or, bands that I might not have heard of that are more to your neck of the woods?
Let's see. In this neck of the woods, I mean, I still think my buddy Chris Mercado at the Mad Walls, he's great. I think that it's basically him. And I've helped him over the years with organ and some mixing and stuff, but he's a great musician. I think he just texted me the other day, like, new album's done. I did it all by myself, but I think it's cool. And I'm just like, that's going to be fucking awesome because he's really good. So the Mad Walls, definitely give him some attention when he drops that record. And then there's some other great bands like in Europe that we've run, cross paths with. And my buddies in this band Fuchs Nihil are really great. They're doing like a West Coast psychedelic pop, Doorsy thing too. And I've I've mixed mixed both of their records and played like, you know, Wurlitzer and Farfisa and some, you know, sitar on their stuff. But Fuchs Nihil, it means nihilist folks in German. They're really cool though. And the bass player Flo is like a good friend of mine. So, and he's just like a solid dude. He was up here staying with us in the cabin for a couple of weeks in November. And we actually recorded some stuff. So he's a great singer, great musician. And yeah, sings like a goddamn angel. I don't know how he does it. Good job, Flo. And then let's see. And there's another band that it's actually a well-known band in some places, but Klaus Johann Grobe. You ever heard that group? Mm-mm. Man, I don't know why they aren't a huge band. These guys are amazing. I first heard about them because they were opening for Temples in like some of their European dates. And my buddies from Temples were like, you got to check out the Klaus Johann Grobe guys. They're really cool. It's like these two Swiss guys, you know, they sing in German, Swiss German, but it's like amazing synths and keyboards and groovy beats, and it's really well produced. And I mean, they sing in Swiss German, and maybe that's the reason they're not like really huge, because that's like a kind of a niche thing. But I like when people sing in their native language. I think it's like, it can be kind of pandering when people are just like, we just have to sing in English because that's like the lingua terra or whatever, and that's what we have to do. I think it's awesome they sing in Swiss German. They're actually a big influence on our new music, because it's just this like using old organs and electric pianos and just drums and bass, but making something that sounds like futuristic. It's like an anachronism. It's like, when was this made? Because it's like all the stuff they're using is probably, you know, could have been around in the 60s and 70s, but it sounds like it could be blasted at a club, you know, in a club that I'd want to be in, you know. So Klaus Johann Grobe, check out that band. I think those are my 3 recommendations right now.
That's awesome, because I've never heard of any of them. So that'll be good to dive into some new music. Awesome.
I'll throw some links in the email, man. It's good stuff.
So this might be a question that you've answered, you know, a million times in interviews like this or anything like that. But I kind of want to know if you know, what do you think is next for Triptides?
You know, it's always exciting because, I mean, aside from, we have a new record coming out at the end of April. It's called Starlight. We've got a new single dropping at the end of the month called Unwound. And I think it's going to be, you know, it'll be a definite palate cleanser from the more rural psych stuff we did. It's going to be, like I said, more that electric piano driven 70s psych pop stuff, like whatever. It's almost like Stevie Wonder grooves and stuff. So, because nice. I'm a piano player originally. That's my first instrument. My dad made me take piano, so it's like, which I appreciated. But now I'm just trying to incorporate all that stuff because I love vintage keyboards, and it was like, shit, I'm just making all these jams. So that's probably next. Our next tour is shaping up for the summer, potentially. I mean, it's not 100% locked in, but keep an eye out. And if that happens, there'll be no acoustic guitars. It'll be all electric keyboards and stuff, and fuzzes and synths. And I don't know. I like to just do whatever we want, but in a way that's like, you know, the songwriting links it all together, because it's not like I'm writing vastly different vibes. I mean, the vibes are different, but the songs are still, I think, my songs, or the band's songs, whatever you want to call it. And so the future is looking like more of that, possibly some more tours in the States at the end of the summer, still locking it all in. But I don't know. I try not to make too much of a plan, because I don't want to, like, you know, expectations can kill your creativity sometimes. It's just like, I'm happy just to wake up and write music and hit the road when it's time, release another record, you know, work with great musicians, meet great people. I don't know. I'm happy just to do what I'm doing. It's like, I feel like that's the key for the longevity of the musical project. It's not like having, I mean, my plan is to get famous and like buy like a mansion, but you know, but like seriously, like I feel like those are the kind of people, like, I feel like bands like ended during COVID and stuff. Some bands were like, we're done. And it's like, how are you done? Like, what was your deal? What were you trying to accomplish? You're just like trying to like make a bunch of money or like get famous, or like people will quit bands. And it's just like, what were you in the band for? Did you really want to like play music and like rock out and have camaraderie with other great musicians and travel and meet people? Or is it like a status thing where you're just trying to be cool, where you're trying to be better than someone else that you didn't like and you had to like one up them? I wonder sometimes about this shit because it doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm just happy to pick up the guitar or sit at the piano, play and sing some cool stuff, have a couple drinks, rock. It doesn't matter. Like, I feel like it's supposed to be fun. Like, if you want to make money, like, go get a fucking job, right? I think we've seen with our previous conversation that it's very difficult to make money as a musician in the 2020s here, unless you get some good syncs. And we've been lucky. We've got some syncs, and we work with the licensing company, and every now and then lightning will strike. But like, for the most part, it's not making a ton of money. And it's like, I do it because I love to do it. And I think as long as you love to do it and you're called to make music, like, the band can go on forever. The music can keep going. And those are the people that I love. Like, I respect like people like Martin Newell from Cleaners from Venus, because he would just like make a bunch of songs on a cassette machine and then like be like, that's enough, and like mail them out and like make another one and be like, that's enough songs, mail them out. He's never trying to be famous, never trying to like make money, just like writes for the paper and like does jobs and like has a house in Wivenhoe or whatever. It's small rural England, and he's happy. And I'm like, that's the goal here, just to like make music because you love to do it, not making music because you need to be on Pitchfork and play fucking Bowery Ballroom and be like super cool. It's like, I don't think that's cool anymore for me. Like, we're past that. I mean, it was cool in the early 2000s, and it's like, I still think like the Strokes are cool and they did all that shit and they got like huge and they're on magazines, but like, I don't think we're there anymore. I think we've moved into a new era, and I think that era is more about being an artist. That's it. That's my rant about the future.
Okay, cool. I think we're going to wrap the conversation up, and dude, thank you again, seriously, because this has been really awesome getting to get like an inside look into the mind of, this music that I've really been enjoying for the past few years.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been fun. I like talking about this stuff. It's a good time.
Awesome. Is there anything that you want to, like, social media handles or releases or anything that you have coming up or have out that you want to direct people towards? And I'll put like, a thing on the bottom of the screen that's basically like tells people like a text version of what you're saying.
Yeah, we've got a new single dropping on February 28th, Unwound, and there's going to be a music video, and then we have a new record coming out on April 28th called Starlight, and we're really excited about it. If you like psychedelic pop with electric pianos and Farfisa organs and Stereo Lab and all that jazz, you should definitely check it out. And if you didn't like our last record, that's on you. But it's going to be a lot different than that. So don't discredit the band because you didn't like our folky record, because we're a multifaceted and multidimensional group. We contain multitudes of shit. So I don't know. The end. That's my spiel.
I can attest to this. If you listen to all the way from like Psychic Summer to So Many Days, there's a lot of depth and range there. So I encourage everybody to go check those out. Go check out Fuzz City. That's a great documentary about Glenn and Triptides. And yeah, thanks again for being on here, dude.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. See ya.
Adios.